So you know that Sulu and Chekhov are the same age. They're 86.
No, I didn't know that.
And it's funny because they'll probably die before William Shatner does. Doesn't that suck?
Yeah. Why will they die before him?
Because he's going to live forever.
Oh.
Well, Josh, we've been waiting for this moment for like almost seems like 2 years. In reality, probably what, like a year and a half maybe?
Mm-hmm. Year and a half.
And this was the one thing I was most excited for, Star Trek the Motion Picture, because I knew nothing about it. I've seen clips from little pieces of Star Trek all over the place, but really nothing from TMP. And now that it's here and gone, and I loved it very much.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch our reaction, we did have like an over 20-minute conversation right after the movie. But, regardless of how much we even had to say right after, anytime I feel like you watch something and discuss it right afterwards, it's just your raw, reaction and thoughts to it. But letting it sit for a little while, it's been a couple of weeks now since we've watched it. Tell me if I'm wrong or if it's changed. I think based off our just initial reaction, we both liked it, but you liked it a bit more than me. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I loved it. I think in the climate of science fiction, where everything is like visual puke space battles. You know what I mean? There's
Hmm.
like just too much happening at once. And to have the restraint, especially like post Star Wars, and like just to be reserved and like tell like a classic Star Trek story instead of going like full schlock and being, like the Enterprise and like space battles with Klingons. It's like a weapon's only fired like twice in this whole movie.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with that. And while in the future movies, I hope to see some of that stuff that you're talking about, it was definitely nice to see a movie that was not very formulaic at all. Like, it wasn't necessarily predictable. It wasn't anything that I was bored by or have seen a million times. It was just interesting. And I think the only difference between us two is that I thought it was interesting and entertaining. I just didn't necessarily love what it was. Like for what it was, the story that it told and what it wanted to be, I think it did everything successfully. I just think that it wasn't necessarily everything I wanted out of a Star Trek movie that I think hopefully I will get, namely just the character stuff. We really got to see everyone on the bridge together, and that's it. It's like there wasn't even really a development of anybody besides these new characters that we meet. From reading the comments, and something I learned about it is that it was originally going to be a new TV show.
Yeah, phase two they were gonna call it. Yeah, I think that's why like all like the new Enterprise, like the new costumes, like all that stuff is already in pre-production for phase two.
And I think that is why it comes off feeling like a pilot, like a first act, because it literally was
Yeah,
at one point. The fact that it even translated as well as it did is pretty surprising because that's a formula to not have a very fun movie. But I think overall it was very fun, even though it was limited for the most part to the bridge and to the Enterprise. And I think outside of the bridge and the Enterprise, is all in like the very first 30 minutes, and then when they get to the core of V'ger and they step outside. Besides that, an hour and a half plus of this movie is the crew on the bridge and then shots of things outside of the Enterprise, and like that's it. So I'm still now 2 weeks after watching it surprised at how not bored I was. Like how much I genuinely like you explained that to me, and I would think like, yeah, that sounds like one of the boring episodes of TOS. But no, it wasn't. It was very entertaining and visually entertaining, which I am curious to know how that will hold up on rewatches.
even like the 15-minute segment of Scotty and Shatner looking at the ship, I'm still like, God, that looks incredible. Or even the Klingon battle cruisers, like just the night and day difference, the 10-year difference makes it look like it's been a 100-year difference in terms of like a quality upgrade. It's just insane. Like I couldn't, like there was no part of me that was like, okay. I mean, except for the wormhole scene. Tor-
Torpedo,
torpedoes.
belay that
Yeah.
order.
And especially when they get inside V'ger, like just knowing those were all like models built.
Oh yeah.
Like none of that is computer generated really. All of that was just like miniatures built. Like it's such an appreciation. Like I'm so like appreciative of like actual physical filmmaking that I'm like I couldn't be bored. The sense of scale, because just one perfectly shot. The opening when we first see the Enterprise, like it looks huge, in the dry dock. We get to see every little nook and cranny, like all the new like designs on it. But then we see it inside the V'ger. It's like this little thing going through it. It's like perfect way to set up the scope of
Yes.
how big this thing is. Just masterclass.
The scale and the visuals of that is might be the best thing about this movie. Like it truly like breathtaking and crazy how good it looked. I mean, they got Robert Wise, like classic director, obviously, like one of the best directors ever. So, they didn't fail on who they chose to direct the movie. For me, I do wonder how much of it was just being so happy to see everyone again. And kind of how everyone looked different or how people acted different. Like Leonard Nimoy's performance in this is like completely different than the Spock we see in most of TOS.
Is there anything else?
No.
Apparently, even Leonard Nimoy didn't want to do the movie, and then like when he came in for his scenes, he like method acted and was very cold towards the cast. So like it'd be more effective when he acted cold to them in the scenes. But like it all like and plus V'ger and Spock's like thing, their arc is almost the same. Like they're looking for their answers. Spock's trying to do the Kandahar, I think that's how it's pronounced, on Vulcan, but he's like, there's something I got to do. I got to figure out what this is. V'ger's trying to figure out its purpose, and at the end, they both figure out what they needed. Like it's not about all logic information. They needed that connection. That great scene where Spock, grabs Kirk's hands like this.
This simple feeling is beyond V'ger's comprehension.
None of the reveals were good except for Bones.
Except for Bones.
I forgot about Bones! Oh my god!
I forgot about Bones!
So let's talk about the timeline. So this apparently takes place 2.5 years after the first 5-year mission, which is crazy to me because it's only been like 2.5 years. Like in canon, the drastic changes to the Enterprise, everyone's uniform is ridiculous.
Yeah, it really doesn't make any sense why it couldn't have just been 10 years. Like, everyone looks 10 years older. Everyone, like you said, there's the changes to the ship, changes to the uniforms. Everyone's acting like Kirk's, like, too old at the beginning to be the captain. If it was only 2.5 years ago, I feel like they would all be still fresh off their 5-year mission. Do they even address how long it's been in the movie? Or is that just, like, confirmed elsewhere?
No, they say it's been 2.5 years since you've logged a single star hour.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So okay.
So I don't know. Maybe Kirk was on a different ship, or
Yeah, because that's what I thought when they said that in the movie. I was like, oh, he was just not a captain. He was just doing something else.
Yeah.
But people just took that to mean that's how long it's been.
Yeah. I would also like to see what Kirk did as an admiral. Like we've never seen what he does. We finally get to see Earth in that timeline, which was cool. Like that big matte painting of like San Francisco, but we don't know like what he does as an admiral. You know what I mean? Like I'd like to know what his duties were, because as soon as we see him, like he's coming in like, oh, we have this this earthly threat, and of course the Enterprise is the only ship in interceptable range to stop it, because of course.
Do you want to talk about the two new characters?
Yes, I really like Ilia and Decker. I think Decker is like that perfect like young version of Kirk. He's even got the same like hairstyle. He's very like not Kirk for like young Kirk, like TOS Kirk, probably like 10 years prior TOS Kirk, where he's still like young, chipper, got a little bit of an ego. It's like, oh, young captain. And their relationship with Ilia, I thought was very like it. I think it helped move this. Like, there was no part during any of their scenes where I'm like, "Where's Kirk? Where's Spock? Where's Bones?" Like, I was fully invested and interested in their own story.
Yeah, I think that's one of the elements that is most helped out by the fact that it was going to be a show. Because I read that they were going to be characters in the show because they wanted to expand how many people were on the crew, like on the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell watching the movie, like, these are fleshed out characters. And we don't get to see a ton of it, but especially with Ilia, like, she has a whole lore and backstory, the whole thing about the celibacy and all of that. You can tell, they fleshed her out for that TV show. So it's unfortunate she only gets to be in this, presumably. But it works well because it's so rare that you have like new characters introduced in an existing thing in a movie and they actually are like fleshed out and well done characters in their first go. They introduced these two new characters and they did well, but like had they not been in the movie, we could have had a lot more time with everybody else.
Yeah, true. I think just knowing that there's other movies out there, it didn't bother me. And how they played into the integral part of the movie in a smart, neat way, in my opinion, I was okay with it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that with hindsight and us watching this so many years later, it's easier to swallow than like I wonder how I would have felt if I was around at that time
Yes.
watching it in theaters.
Yes, but I think that's also, it fits into a lot of TOS episodes. You know what I mean? There's always like some sidebar or just introduced for that episode character that plays into. So I think it fits very well into a generic Star Trek narrative. I just love the unfamiliarity with the new Enterprise.
This is an almost totally new Enterprise. You don't know her a tenth as well as I do.
That's why you're staying aboard.
There's a scene where he's walking through the hallways, and it's very subtle, but like this look on his face where it's like, I don't know where I am, and he goes up to an ensign. It's like, ensign, can you pour me where the 8th bay is? She's like, oh, down there, and he starts walking back, and like Decker's just standing there at the end of the hallway, like I'm like, oh, that's good, because Decker's like, you took my job. I know the ship better than you do.
Yeah.
And I love that battling rivalry between them two. And like Bones, when he finally comes in, him being like he's like so on Kirk, like Kirk, you gotta stop pushing. Like people talk about like Spock being on Kirk's shoulder, but like Bones is just as important. Like he's just as important to help keep Kirk. He's like, hey man, you gotta take a step back there. Like he stopped competing with me. Like you're the one competing with him. It's like,
how do you feel about the whole V'ger Voyager thing and all the whole outcome of what ends up happening?
for me, it doesn't make sense because like the Voyager probe landed. It's like, wouldn't it know its name in the programming? Like, why would it why would charcoal on this thing?
Oh yeah,
You know what I mean? Like,
that's interesting.
it's just like just a plot device.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Voyager. Voyager.
I remember we were talking about like the transporter mishap. Like, why did that happen? But apparently, like Starfleet just rewatching it, like they sent people too early because they're on like a time crunch. Like, oh, it's like, oh, the ship will be ready in 20 hours. Got to get it done in 12. So like Scotty, like in the engineering room, is just trying to get things going. And while he's like working on stuff, they start transporting people, and they just weren't ready to receive them. So that's why they got all messed up.
That might be the most brutal Star Trek death we've seen.
Yes.
When you think about it.
Yes, and like the line of like the person on the other end of the communicator is like, "What we got back didn't live long."
Oh.
Like, not they didn't live long. What we got back. Like, I'm just thinking of, you've seen The Fly, right?
Yeah.
You know, like when the teleportation goes wrong, it's all like inside. It's ugh.
How about Janice being in the movie?
Janice, yeah, just like the way they reveal her as well, not as well. I think you pointed it out. Like, is that Janice? I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah, and it took him like she was on screen for a while before they acknowledged that who it was, because he eventually calls her Rand, her Rand's name, and like they acknowledge that she's been moving up from Yeoman, but they don't like at first, like she's just there. Like Leonard Nimoy, to me, I get what he was trying to do, but like to me it felt a little off from like the Spock that I know in the show. But like Kirk felt like Kirk, Shatner felt like Kirk, and didn't seem like he missed a beat. So yeah, I thought he did great.
Bones was Bones. Given what the rest of the crew was given for this, I think they did pretty well.
Yeah, out of everyone else, I think Nichelle Nichols was the best by far with what she was given. I mean, she just gave everything to whatever episode she got to do something in, this movie, the animated series. Like, so far, she's just given it all every time.
And just always in that chair, but she always does her best just from that chair. Would I have liked to see her more, like we saw like in TAS? You know what I mean? Like her given like more of the reins, but like just a pro. A pro. I wish like Kirk had a nice scene with like everybody in that sort of sense. Because even when he first arrives, everyone's like, "Oh, Captain." He's like, he doesn't say like, "Good to see you" or anything. But like, I wish we had like more of those scenes with the whole crew. What do you think about the robots, Ilia? So the Lightning comes in, takes out regular Ilia, and then like we have like a whole new performance.
I at first was kind of disappointed of like, oh, we just got this new character, now she's dead already, because this robot was like, I don't know how they said it, but they alluded to her being dead essentially.
Yeah, it's like what the V'ger does is like it absorbs all that data, puts it in its data bank, but it's killing them by doing that. So it absorbed her and then sent out a probe in her in her vision.
Yeah. So I was disappointed that that character had died, but that actor as the robot version, I think I like even better than the normal version because that was awesome.
She killed it, dude.
I have recorded enough here.
Let's talk about those stupid security guard costumes.
God.
Those football helmets.
Looked like something out of Spaceballs.
There's a neat scene where like Kirk like relays an order, and then like two different sections of the Enterprise are talking to each other on the communicator. Like I think it's like the engine room and like some other room, but we can hear them talking, but we just see like from the bridge's perspective. Like I thought that was neat. Like just very small thing where like two sections are talking on the communicator, but it's not who we see on screen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I don't know. That's probably how it works a lot of the time. You know, like cop radios or military radios. There's always conversations going on the thing. So it kind of makes sense that like yeah, you're gonna hear stuff that doesn't directly involve you. Just
Yeah.
this little thing I thought was cool. The ending with Ilea forming with Decker. What do we think about that?
Yeah, I thought it was fine. I mean, by this point in the movie, I wasn't like I knew that the story of the movie wasn't going to be, the hook for me, not the strongest part of it. So I was just kind of along for whatever they did. It made sense because you're not, once they made the decision that they're not going to keep around these characters, it made sense. It makes them purposeful in the movie, so I liked it. But yeah, everything with the story isn't what I really cared for in the movie. So I just was like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, I just liked them just going to V'ger, like the slow, like we're gonna like this is a slow reveal of like what is this thing? What is this thing? We keep going deeper and deeper and deeper, and like the cool like blocks they're walking on. The reveal is what it is. Fine, not kind of neat, kind of cool.
But I like how they don't even like go back to the base or anything.
Yeah,
like,
no, they don't even go
just
back.
survive this like extremely dangerous thing, and they're like, all right, keep going.
Take us that away. Kirk's like, that asshole's gone. Ship's mine.
It's like they're not even on like an official like 5-year mission or anything. They're just like, let's just keep going. We'll see what's out there.
You know how I feel about Kirk versus computer, but I don't know. Just being excited to see everyone again, I was okay with it, and just it almost took me back where it's like, oh yeah, those are good times.
I think that the main reason it's better than really any Kirk versus computer episode of TOS is that in so many of those episodes they don't have the time, so like it ends up just being 40 plus minutes of whatever the plot is, and then the ending Kirk just being like, okay, now I'm going to talk it into exploding, and it's one scene. This movie got to flesh out what a Kirk versus computer, the whole thing could end up being like, and the solution wasn't him just talking it into exploding. Like there was a real solution of how they had to get out of it. With the character needing to essentially sacrifice himself. So it just felt a lot more fleshed out, and I think that's why, while at the end of the day, it's not my favorite story format still for Star Trek, it was probably the best example of Kirk versus computer that I can think of.
Yeah, I agree. It's probably my favorite one, yeah.
I think even, sorry, real quick, I think even calling it Kirk versus computer is probably a bit reductive, because like there's a lot more to it.
It's more than just a computer, yeah. It's more interesting, I think. It's not just some computer on an alien species, but to play like what if scenario, it's like, what if Decker didn't come down? What if the lightning bolt chose someone else? You can pick apart any script. It's fine. It's fine. It's great. I love it. It's really took me back to like very great episodes of Star Trek that are all character driven, like a character driven play with under the guise of a science fiction show. You know what I mean? That's what this felt like. Yes, it's about this V'ger thing, but it's all about getting the crew back together. Getting Kirk, Spock, Bones, and everyone else resolving that relationship to go on more adventures. That's basically what this felt like. An excuse to get the crew back together. And you know what I mean?
Yeah, I could see that for sure. And we'll see if we still feel the same way after watching the next 3 movies. Because I'm very interested in how we'll feel about it after we've seen a few Star Trek movies, because we've only seen one.
Also, the score was good.
The score was excellent.
The score was very excellent. And we only hear like the original theme, like jingle, like when he does the captain's log. But like even like the new score written by Jerry Goldsmith. I think that's his name. Don't yell at me yet. Yeah, Jerry Goldsmith, who did he also did Star Trek First Contact and Congo. But yeah, very good score. Very good score.
All right, well, if that's all you have to say, we asked our target demographic tier patrons what they thought of the motion picture. So we're going to go ahead and end this video. Usually their names scroll up as a special thank you, but this time we're also going to include their reviews and what they thought of the motion picture as well as just general thoughts they had about us watching it in our journey in Star Trek so far. So thank you to our target demographic tier patrons, and you can see what they had to say. But in the meantime, I think that's it for us.
That's it. We're done.